In this video tutorial, Steve and I are going to show you how one of the most interesting aspects of the new rules, Age of Hannibal, works, and that is the terrain card system. Now, if you're doing a historical scenario, like Zama or Trebia, then that scenario, of course, is going to tell you how to set up a historical battlefield. But if you're building your own army to create a new battle, this is the process that you're going to use. It starts with an empty tabletop. The one that we're using here is 6 foot by 4 foot, and you use these cards, which you can either print out from the PDF, or you can tear out from the back of the rulebook.
So why is something like this important when you're setting up an Ancients game? Well, if you know anything about ancient battles, you know that choosing where to fight was half of that battle. And so any rule system really needs to have a robust pre-battle procedure of some sort to allow for some tactical challenges and making impactful decisions that absolutely will affect the way the fight goes.
Along those lines, one of the things that made Hannibal such a great commander wasn't necessarily what he was doing in the battle, it's what he did before the battle. Hannibal was the master of choosing the perfect battlefield that really maximized the advantages of his army, allowed him to set up ambushes and use some great stratagems, all of which you can do with this terrain card system.
And the goal is to keep it simple, though, because we don't want setup to take too long, so you should be able to get through this entire process in about 10 minutes or less.
So we're going to start this process by first putting out little dice here on the table, and these are just temporary in order to grid off our tabletop into 1 foot by 1 foot squares. After we're done putting out the terrain, we'll get rid of the dice. But we've gotten them set up here into the 1 foot grids, and then we're going to shuffle up a deck of 50 terrain cards, and we're going to alternate dealing these out, 9 cards per player. So of course, part of the point of this system is I'm looking here at my cards, and I have no idea what terrain cards Steve has in his hand, but I can tell you that I do like the look of my initial hand, so I'm going to go ahead and show you the cards that I've been dealt. So I've got a small hill, that's a good one. I really like marsh, that's rough ground that I could use either on my own baseline or I could use to try to screw up Steve. This is very nice, I have a stratagem. This is not something that I have to use, but I'm going to have the option. Feigned flight. I've got some clear ground. This is just open terrain. Oh, I've got a little bit more clear ground I'm going to have to deal out. And a third clear ground. I've also got a stream. Stream is a really nice one. Again, I could use this to sort of anchor my own line, or I could try to extend it out to mess up Steve. And of course, some woods are always a nice terrain piece to have. This is a large hill. Earlier I had a small hill. The difference, of course, is that large hill, as you can see on the text, extends into a neighboring space, which means it's actually going to fill 2 grid spaces. And that's my hand. All right, so Steve and I are going to roll off to see who places the first card.
You got a 6.
I have a 6. We'll roll again.
I have the better hat, so I win the tie. 7.
5. Steve's won, so he is going to place the first card. And importantly, cards in Age of Hannibal in this process are face down, so that I don't know what card Steve has played. He's also required to lay his first card along the back line. This enables you to build out, but it means that he can't put his first card over here on my half of the board.
Right. Now, it's also important when you're placing your card that you place your cards in an orientation so that you can tell who placed which card. So because we have some of Chal's wonderful artwork here, I'm going to make sure that Hannibal is facing me. And that's going to be my cards. While I have to work out from the back row, once I get out here, I can do any adjacent square. And that includes moving on the diagonal.
So one of the things that I have to worry about now that I've seen Steve place his terrain card here is he's gotten dangerously close to being able to play a card right in my initial deployment area. So if he's got a nasty card in his hand, maybe some rough ground or a marsh, he could try to screw me by putting that back here in the middle of my deployment zone. I'm going to go ahead and block one of those potential moves right here by putting a card in my own deployment zone. So we've gotten down to the final cards in our hands. Remember, we dealt 9 cards to start the game. The last key in the card play of Age of Hannibal is that the 9th card you always hold. You don't actually play this card on the table. You set it aside face down. And the reason for that is that your card might be a stratagem. There are 8 different stratagems that could come up in the deck. And because they're randomly dealt, that means you don't know if you're going to get one. And if you do get one, you don't know exactly what it will be. So Steve has put his card down over there. It might be a stratagem, or it could just be a terrain card he elected not to use. I'm going to go ahead and set mine over here on the rail. And of course, because we looked at my hand in order to start the game, you know that I do have a stratagem. I don't have to play it. It's simply an option. So at any time during the battle that unfolds, I could elect to reveal this stratagem and use it, or if I don't like it, I could just set it aside. So now that all the cards are out here, we're going to go ahead and flip them over, and then we're going to set up the terrain. Well, now that we flipped over all the cards, it doesn't really matter the order in which we put the terrain out here because the cards are here. All that matters is that the person who played the card gets to put the terrain anywhere that fits inside that 1 foot by 1 foot grid. So we're going to go ahead and start laying terrain. So that's it, just like that, we've gone ahead and we've set up a randomized battlefield that each of us had some input in developing. So Steve, based on the cards you had, what's some of the strategy that you were going for as you laid your terrain?
Well, basically I wanted to try and funnel things into a smaller area and protect at least one of the flanks because I put the woods here, the hill there. I figured I'd force most of the action on this part of the table and make it harder for you to come around my left if that's what you were planning on doing.
That is not what I was planning on doing because I went ahead and laid a stream and some marshy ground over here. I was hoping to use those elements in order to get into Steve's deployment area and screw him up, but he blocked off all of his own grids over there. So instead I used them to anchor my flank, so it seems like we both had a pretty similar idea.
Yeah, and the fight's going to be very intense in a much smaller area, I think.
Yes, it is. But that's some of the fun that you get when you use the terrain card system. You don't know exactly what the battlefield will look like, but you've got a say in developing it. So we hope that you enjoyed this quick tutorial on how to use the terrain cards, and hope that you're able to give them a spin with Age of Hannibal.